Hello everyone, good afternoon. I hope everyone is doing okay. We had a rough day yesterday and I'm not going to really talk about it because I feel like every time I look on Facebook that somebody is talking about it, and I'd rather just pick up and continue on to the part 2 of the book, The Dogma of Hell by Father Schouppe. So this chapter is chapter 4. I'm going to try to do chapters 4, 5, and 6 today, and the subject is the denial of hell is foolish bravado. There are some miserable men, let us rather say fools, who in the delirium of their iniquity make bold to declare that they laugh at hell. They say so, but only with their lips. Their consciences protest and give them the lie. Collot de Courroy, famous for his impiety as much as for his sanguinary ferocity, was the chief author of the massacres of Lyon in 1793. He caused the destruction of 1,600 victims. 6 years after, in 1799, he was banished to Cayenne. Sorry, my dog is flopping around on my thing. And used to give vent to his infernal rage by blaspheming the holiest things. Let me turn off my signal. Okay. Christian piety became the subject of his jests. Having seen a soldier make the sign of the cross, he said to him, "Imbecile, you still believe in superstition. Do you not know that God, the Holy Virgin, Paradise, Hell are the invention of the accursed tribe of priests?" Shortly after, he fell sick and was seized by violent pains. In an excess of fever, he swallowed, at a single draught, a bottle of liquor. His disease increased. He felt as if burned by a fire that was devouring his bowels. He uttered frightful shrieks, called upon God, the Holy Virgin, a priest, to come to his relief. "Well, indeed," said the soldier to him, "you ask for a priest? You fear hell, then?" You used to curse the priest, make fun of hell. Alas, he then expired. He then answered, "My tongue was lying to my heart." Pretty soon he expired, vomiting blood and foam. The following incident happened in 1837. A young second lieutenant, being in Paris, entered the Church of the Assumption near the Tuileries and saw a priest kneeling near a confessional. As he made religion the habitual subject of his jokes, he wished to go to confession to while away the time, and went into the confessional. "Monsieur l'Abbé," he said, "would you be good enough to hear my confession?" "Willingly, my son, confess unrestrained. But I must first say that I am rather a unique kind of sinner. No matter, the sacrament of penance has been instituted for all sinners. But I am not very much a believer in religious matters. You believe more than you think. Believe I am a regular scoffer." The confessor saw with whom he had to deal, and there was some kind of mystification. He replied, smiling, "You are a regular scoffer. Are you then making fun of me too?" The pretended penitent smiled in like manner. "Listen," the priest went on. "What you have just done here is not serious. Let us leave confession aside, and, if you please, have a little chat. I like military people very much, and then you have the appearance of a good, amiable youth. Tell me, what is your rank?" "Second lieutenant." "Will you remain a second lieutenant long? 2, 3, perhaps 4 years? And after?" "I shall become a first lieutenant, and after, I hope to become a captain, and after, lieutenant colonel." "How old will you be then?" 40 to 45 years. "And after that, I shall become a brigadier general." "And after, if I rise higher, I shall be a general of a division. And after, there is nothing more except the marshal's baton, but my pretensions do not reach so high." "Well and good, but do you not intend to get married?" "Yes, when I shall be a superior officer." "Well, there, you are married, a superior officer, a general, perhaps even a French marshal, who knows? And after? After, upon my word, I do not know what will be after." "See how strange it is," said the abbé. Then, in a tone of voice that grew more sober, "You know all that shall happen up to that point, and you do not know what will be after. Well, I know, and I'm going to tell you. After, you shall die, be judged, and if you continue to live as you do, you shall be damned, you shall go burn in hell. That is what will be after." As the second lieutenant, dispirited at this conclusion, seemed anxious to steal away, the abbé said, "One moment, sir, you are a man of honor, so am I. Agree that you have offended me and owe me an apology. It will be simple. For 8 days before retiring to rest, you will say, 'One day I shall die, but I laugh at the idea. After my death I shall be judged, but I laugh at the idea. After my judgment I shall be damned, but I laugh at the idea. I shall burn forever in hell, but I laugh at the idea.' That is all. But you are going to give me your word of honor to neglect it, huh?" More and more wearied, and wishing at any price to extricate himself from this blunder, the second lieutenant made the promise. In the evening, his word being given, he began to carry out his promise. I shall die, he said. I shall be judged. He had not the courage to add, I laugh at the idea. The week had not passed before he returned to the Church of the Assumption, made his confession seriously, and came out of the confessional, his face bathed with tears and with joy in his heart. A young person who had become an unbeliever in consequence of his dissipation kept incessantly shooting sarcasm at religion and making jests of its most awful truths. Juliet, someone said to her one day, this will end badly. God will be tired of your blasphemies, and you shall be punished. Bah, she answered insolently, it gives me very little trouble. Who has returned to the other world to relate what passes there? Less than 8 days after, she was found in her room, giving no sign of life and already cold. As there was no doubt that she was dead, she was put in a coffin and buried. The next day, her grave digger, digging a new grave beside that of the unhappy Juliet, heard some noise. It seemed to him that there was a knocking in the adjoining coffin. At once he put his ear to the ground, and in fact heard a smothered voice crying out, help, help. The authorities were summoned, and by their orders the grave was opened, the coffin taken up and unnailed. The shroud was removed. There was no further doubt Juliet had been buried alive. Her hair, her shroud were in disorder, and her face was streaming with blood. While they were releasing her and feeling her heart to be assured that it was still beating, she heaved a sigh like a person for a long time deprived of air. Then she opened her eyes, made an effort to lift herself up, and said, My God, I thank thee. Afterward, when she had got her senses well back, and by the aid of some food recovered her strength, she added, When I regained consciousness in the grave and recognized the frightful reality of my burial, when after having uttered shrieks, I endeavored to break my coffin and struck my forehead against the boards, I saw that all was useless. Death appeared to me with all its horrors. It was less the bodily than the eternal death that frightened me. I saw I was going to be damned. My God, I had but too well deserved it. Then I prayed, I shouted for help, I lost consciousness again, and I woke above ground. Oh, the goodness of my God, she said, again shedding tears. I had despised the truths of faith. Thou hast punished me, but in thy mercy I am converted and repentant. They who deny hell will be forced to admit it soon, but alas, it will be too late. Father Nuremberg, in his work, The Difference Between Time and Eternity, speaks of an unfortunate sinner who, as the result of his evil ways, had lost the faith. His virtuous wife exhorted him to return to God and reminded him of hell, but he would always answer obstinately, there is no hell. One day his wife found him dead. In strange circumstance, he held in his hand a mysterious paper on which in large characters was traced the terrifying avowal, I now know that there is a hell. Okay, I'm going to take a little water break. I think my voice is still kind of strained from yesterday. Scarlett, stop. The dog keeps messing with my camera. She's all stretched out, taking a nap. Scarlett, move your head. Move your head. Good girl. Okay, there we go. All right. Chapter 5, The Awakening of the Ungodly Soul in Hell. Unhappy sinners who are lulled to rest by the illusions of the world and who live as if there were no hell will be suddenly stripped of their illusions by the most frightful of catastrophes. From the midst of their pleasures they shall fall into the pit of torments. The disaster of Café Kivoto supplies an image of the catastrophe still more terrible, which awaits them sooner or later. The Kivoto was a theatrical cafe at Smyrna built upon piles in the sea. The extremely stout stakes that kept the house above the waves, water, and time eaten had lost their solid contents. It was on February 11th, 1873 at 10 p.m. 200 persons had assembled to witness a comic spectacle. They were amusing themselves when all of a sudden a frightful crash was heard. At the same moment, everything gave way and was turned topsy-turvy. The house with the theater and spectators was pitched forward and swallowed up in the sea. Scarlett, stop. What an awful surprise for those amusement amateurs, but a more tragic surprise awaits the worldling. A day will come when, from the center of his pleasures, he will all of a sudden behold himself cast headlong into a sea of sulfur and fire. On the night of March 31st to April 1st, 1873, a stately and magnificent steamship, the Atlantic, foundered on the Canadian banks near Halifax. The number on board, passengers and crew, reached 950, of which 700 were lost in the shipwreck. Most of them were wrapped in sleep when the vessel, striking some rocks, sank almost instantaneously. Swallowed up by the sea in the middle of their repose, they awoke in the waters and were suffocated before being able to account for the terrible accident which had just happened. Frightful awakening, but more frightful by far will be the awakening of the atheist whenever he shall find himself suddenly engulfed in hell. Torchie, what are you doing? This is my cat. She's being a cat. She's crazy. All right, so this point right here is, a lot of people, they often think that they're going to have the chance to make like a deathbed confession and stuff like that, and that is a luxury. That is a luxury that is denied to so many, because sudden death comes upon a lot of people, whether it's in car crashes, heart attacks, strokes. Like, there's endless, medical emergencies and things that can happen. And we know, like with the Titanic, there were people that were, not everybody was awake, not everybody was able to be rescued, and sudden death, it can happen at any time, and it's just so important to keep ourselves in a right state with God. So, on December 28th, 1879, there occurred the Tay Bridge accident. The train from London to Edinburgh crosses the Tay near Dundee over an iron bridge half a league long. A dreadful storm which had swelled the waves and broken the bridge during the day ended by sweeping away several arches despite the iron crossbars and piers. These arches, when falling, left an empty space which was not perceived in the darkness. At 7:30 p.m., the train came out from Edinburgh, thundered along, carrying 100 travelers. It mounted the fatal bridge, and soon coming on the empty space, was hurled into the waves. Not a cry was heard. In the twinkling of an eye, the victims were in the depths below. What a surprise, what a sudden change, but what will it be when the sinner shall see himself in the twinkling of an eye in the pit of hell? Back in the day, even today we have bridge catastrophes and disasters and things like that. We can't think that, certain things only happened in the past and they can't happen anymore. Like, this still happens, especially in, I don't want to say underdeveloped countries, but countries where they don't have such like robust like safety standards and things for bridges and homes, but it still even happens here in America. It, like living like wildly in sin and riotous living and stuff like that. You're playing with fire, like literally playing with fire, tempting the fire, and you never know if it's going to get you or if you're going to have another 50 years to make that, that deathbed confession that everybody hopes that they can just sneak into, oh God, I'm so sorry, before they, kick the bucket or whatever, and then have lived their life the way that they wanted to live it rather than living for God, and then they expect to stroll through the streets of glory. So it's just too much of a gamble. It's just too much of a gamble. All right, chapter 6. This is how the Son of God speaks to us of hell. Woe to the world because of scandal, for it must needs be that scandals come, but nevertheless, woe to that man by whom scandal cometh. And if thy hand or thy foot scandalize thee, cut it off and cast it from thee. It is better for thee to go into life maimed or lame than having 2 hands or 2 feet to be cast into everlasting fire. And if thy eye scandalize thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. It is better for thee having 1 eye to enter into life than having 2 eyes to be cast into hellfire. That's Matthew 18, 7-9. And fear ye not them that kill the body and are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him that can destroy both soul and body in hell. Matthew 10:28. The rich man also died, and he was buried in hell. And lifting up his eyes when he was in torments, he saw Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water to cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. Luke 16:22-24. These are all verses. So people like, I think it's the Jehovah's Witnesses or something, like they don't believe in hell. Like I'm not understanding. It's clear as day. All right, Matthew 25:41. Then he shall say to them also that shall be on his left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, which was prepared for the devil and his angels. Matthew 8:11 and 12. And I say to you that many shall come from the east and the west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into the exterior darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 22:11 through 13. The king went in to see the guests, and he saw there a man who had not on a wedding garment. And he said to him, Friend, how camest thou in hither not having on a wedding garment? But he was silent. Then the king said to the waiters, Bind his hands and feet, and cast him into the exterior darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 25:30. The unprofitable servant, cast ye out into the exterior darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. But remember, guys, Jesus is love. Jesus is love, but love has boundaries and has expectations and things like that. So people who think Jesus is just soft and mushy and will not punish people with hellfire, they're not reading the Bible. They're thinking up an image of him and trying to preach that image, and it's not biblical at all. All right, Matthew 5:22. But I say to you that whomsoever is angry with his brother shall be in danger of the judgment, and whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council, and whomsoever shall say, Thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Matthew 13:41 and 42. The Son of Man shall send his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all scandals and them that work iniquity, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Mark 9:42 through 47. And if thy hand scandalize thee, cut it off. It is better for thee to enter into life maimed than having two hands to go into hell, into unquenchable fire, where their worm dieth not, and the fire is not extinguished. Matthew 7:19. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit shall be cut down and shall be cast into the fire. John 15:56. I am the vine, you are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same beareth much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. If any one abide not in me, he shall be cast forth as a branch. I don't know what that cat did with my water. And shall wither, and they shall gather him up and cast him into the fire and be burned. And Jesus, turning to them, said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not over me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the day shall come, wherein they will say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that have not borne, and the paps that have not given suck. They shall begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills cover us. For if in the green wood they do these things, what shall be done in the dry? Luke 23:28, 30, and 31. That is to say, what will sinners be destined like the dry wood to be burned? For now the axe is laid to the fruit of the trees. Every tree, therefore, that doth not yield forth good fruit shall be cut down and cast into the fire. I indeed baptize you into water unto penance. But he that shall come after me is mightier than I, whose shoes I am not worthy to bear. He shall baptize you in the Holy Ghost and fire, whose fan is in his hand, and he will thoroughly cleanse his floor and gather his wheat into the barn, but the chaff he will burn with unquenchable fire. Matthew 3:10 through 12, words of John the Baptist. This is Apocalypse 19:20. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet, who wrought signs before him, wherewith he seduced them who received the character of the beast, and who adored his image. These two were cast alive into the pool of fire burning with brimstone, where they were tormented day and night forever and ever, and whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the pool of fire. That was Apocalypse 20:15. All right. To doubt about hell is to doubt the infallible word of God. It is to give ear to the speech of libertines rather than to the infallible teachings of the church. The church teaches that there is a hell. A libertine tells you that there is not. A libertine, it's someone who's basically sexually promiscuous. They do whatever they want physically. They're not bound by the laws of chastity. All right. So the church teaches that there is a hell. A libertine tells you that there is not. And should you prefer to believe a libertine? An honorable Roman, Aemilius Scaurus, was accused by a certain Varus, a man without word or honor. Being obliged to prove his innocence, Scaurus addressed the people in this short speech. Romans, you know Varus, and you know me. Now Varus says I am guilty of the crime charged against me, and I protest that I am not guilty. Varus says yes, I say no. Whom will you believe? The people applauded, and the accuser was confounded. Natural reason confirms the dogma of hell. An atheist was boasting that he did not believe in hell. Among his hearers there was a sensible young man, modest, but who thought that he ought to shut the silly speaker's mouth. He put him a single question. Sir, he said, the kings of earth have prisons to punish their refractory subjects. How can God, the King of the universe, be without a prison for those who outrage his majesty? You know, our justice system, we get it from God. I'm not saying it's perfect like how God is perfect or anything. It's obviously not, but in the way that God has justice, humans have justice. It's something that is within us that we crave. We crave justice. We crave, we want there to be punishment for crimes. We want there to be fairness and things like that. And we get this from the Lord. All right. The sinner had not a word to answer. The appeal was presented to the light of his own reasons, which proclaims that if kings have prison, God must have a hell. The atheist who denies hell is like the thief who should deny the prison. The thief was threatened with sentence to prison. The foolish fellow replied, there is no court, there is no prison. He was speaking thus when an officer of justice put his hand on his shoulder and dragged him before the judge. This is an image of the atheist who was foolish enough to deny hell. A day will come when, taken unawares by divine justice, he shall see himself dashed headlong into the pit which he stubbornly denied, and he shall be forced to acknowledge the terrible reality of hell. See, people don't like hearing about hell. They don't like when it's being preached about, but it's a reality. It's a reality, and it's not pleasant. I'd rather be talking about pleasant things like the fruits of the Spirit, which are very good, but there are times that you have to preach about hell and about what's going on and how to avoid it. It's necessary. All right. The atheist who denies hell is like the African ostrich. That stupid bird, when chased by hunters, plunges its head into the sand and, standing still, believes it is secure from danger because it does not see the enemy. But soon the piercing arrow comes to undeceive it. Thus absorbed, sunk in its earthly things, the sinner is persuaded that he has nothing to fear from hell until the day when death strikes him and shows him by sad experience how deceived he has been. The truth of hell is so clearly revealed that heresy has never denied it. Protestants who have demolished almost all dogmas have not dared to touch this dogma. This fact suggested to a Catholic lady this witty answer, anxiously importuned by two Protestant ministers to pass over into the camp of the Reformation. She replied, gentlemen, you have indeed achieved a fine reformation. You have suppressed fasting, confession, purgatory. Unfortunately, you have kept hell. Put hell away, and I shall be one of you. Yes, messieurs, freethinkers, remove hell and then ask us to be yours. But know that I do not believe in it is not sufficient to do away with it. Is it not the most inconceivable folly to rely on it, perhaps at the risk of falling into hell? Two atheists went one day into an anchorite hermit's cell. At the sight of his instruments of penance, they asked him why he was leading so mortified a life. To deserve paradise, he replied. Good father, they said, smiling, you would be nicely caught if there is nothing after death. Gentlemen, rejoined the holy man as he looked at them with compassion, you will be quite otherwise if there is. A young man belonging to a Catholic family in Holland, as a consequence of imprudent reading, had the misfortune to lose the treasure of faith and to fall into a state of complete indifference. It was the subject of the bitterest grief for his parents, especially his pious mother. In vain did this other Monica give him the most solid lectures. In vain did she admonish him with tears to come back. Her unhappy son was deaf and insensible, yet at last, to satisfy his mother, he was pleased to consent to spend a few days in a religious house, there to follow the exercises of a retreat, or rather, as he put it, to rest a few days and smoke tobacco, an enjoyment he loved. So he listened with a distracted mind to the instructions given to those making the retreat, and speedily after began again to smoke without thinking further of what he had heard. The instruction on hell, to which he seemed to listen to like the rest, came on, but being back again in his little cell while he was taking his smoke as usual, a reflection arose in his mind in spite of himself. If, however, it should be true, he said to himself, that there is a hell, if there be one, clearly it shall be for me. And in reality, do I know myself that there is not a hell? I am obliged to acknowledge that I have no uncertainty on this behalf. The whole basis of my thinking is only a perhaps. Now, to run the risk of burning for eternity on a perhaps, frankly speaking, as a matter of extravagance, would be to go beyond bounds. If there are some who have such courage, I have not sufficiently lost my senses to imitate them. Thereupon he began to pray. Grace penetrated his soul, his doubts vanished, and he rose up converted. A pious author relates the story of the tragic punishment that befell an ungodly scoffer of hell. This was a man of quality whom the author, through respect for his family, does not name. He designates them by the fictitious name of Leontius. This unfortunate man made it a boast to brave heaven and hell, which he treated as chimerical superstitions. One day, when a feast was about to be celebrated at his castle, he took a walk accompanied by a friend and wished to go through the cemetery. Chancing to stumble across a skull lying on the ground, he kicked it aside with profane, blasphemous words. "Out of my way," he said, "rotten bones, worthless remains of what is no more." His companion, who did not share in his sentiments, ventured to say to him that he did wrong to use this language. The remains of the dead, he added, must be respected on account of their souls, which are always alive, which will assume their bodies again on the day of resurrection. We're going to be raised from the dead. And I don't even know where some people think that our physical bodies are not going to be re-raised. Like, there is a resurrection of the dead. The dead in Christ are going to rise again. Like, we are going to have our same bodies. So it's so important. This is why Catholics are not real fans of cremation and things like that. It's like, yes, God has the power and ability to bring together the dust of the flesh and put the body back together, and that will be the case. But I think it's better just to have a regular burial, and we don't spread ashes, because these physical bodies, they're going to rise again. All right. So he kicked the skull that he found on the ground, and Leontius, the skull kicker, answered by this challenge, spoke into the skull. If the spirit that animated thee still exists, let it come and tell me some news about the other world. I invite it for this very evening to my banquet. It's never a good idea to invite a spirit to your home. That is so stupid, because you can invite a spirit and it could be a demon. It could be a disembodied. You never know what you're inviting, so never invite a spirit, okay? All right, so he issued a challenge to the skull that he found on the ground. Evening came. He was at the table with numerous friends and telling his adventure of the cemetery while repeating his profanations, when all at once a great noise was made, and almost at the same time a horrible ghost appeared in the dining room and spread fright among all the guests. So he issued a challenge to the skull, and the spirit belonging to the skull showed up. Leontius, the skull kicker, especially losing all of his audacity, was pale, trembling out of his wits. He wanted to flee. The specter did not give him time, but sprang upon him with the swiftness of lightning and smashed his head to pieces against the wainscot. Never, ever challenge a spirit. Okay? You never know. All right, a day will come when the pride of the ungodly shall be dashed down, and their heads broken by the judge of the living and the dead. The Lord shall judge among nations. He shall fill ruins. He shall crush the heads in the land of many. That is Psalms 109, verse 6. Here is another fact almost contemporaneous and related by a trustworthy author. Two young men, whose names through respect for their families must remain secret, but whom I shall call Eugene and Alexander, old schoolmates and college friends, met again later in life after a long separation. Eugene, having stayed at home, used to occupy himself with the words of charity, including the spirit of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, of which he was a member. Alexander had entered the army and obtained the rank of colonel, but unhappily there lost every spark of religion. Having procured a leave of absence of a few days, he had returned to his family and wished to see Eugene. The interview happened on a Sunday. After they had chatted together for a time, Eugene said, "Alexander, it is time to leave you. Where do you wish to go? It cannot be that there's anything pressing." He said, "I am going first after the business of salvation, then I must attend a benevolent reunion." Poor Eugene, I see it. You still believe in paradise and hell. 'Tis all a chimera, superstition, fanaticism. Dear Alexander, do not speak so. You, like me, learned that the dogmas of faith rest on unexceptionable facts. Chimeras, I tell you, which I believe no longer. If there be a hell, I am willing to go there today. Come with me to the theater. Dear friend, use your liberty, but do not brave God's justice. Eugene spoke to a deaf man who was unwilling to heed salutary advice. He left him with a sore heart. That very day in the evening, Eugene was already in bed when he was awakened. Quick, they said to him, rise, go to Alexander's. He has just been brought back from the theater, seized by a frightful pain. Eugene ran there and found him tossed by violent convulsions with foam in his mouth and rolling his wild eyes. As soon as he saw Eugene, he shouted, you say that there is a hell. You truly say there is a hell, and I am going there. I am there already. I feel its tortures and fury. In vain did Eugene try to calm him. The unhappy man answered only by yells and blasphemies. In the transports of his rage, he tore with his teeth the flesh off his arms and cast the bleeding fragments at Eugene, his mothers, and sisters. It was in this paroxysm of agony that he expired. His mother died of grief, and his 2 sisters entered religion, and Eugene also quitted the world. Owner of a brilliant fortune, he forsook all to consecrate himself to God and avoid hell. All right, so we still have, goodness, another 45 pages to go, and I'm not going to have enough voice to finish this, so I will jump back on tomorrow and we will get this wrapped up. I'm going to start tomorrow probably outlining my other book, and I'm not going to read the entire book like I did this one, but this one was only 90 pages. It was available on Tan Books. I strongly recommend getting it and highlighting passages and things like that. And yeah, so I will be wrapping this particular book up tomorrow, and then we'll start another project on Saturday. So I hope to see you guys tomorrow. God bless. With everything going on, log out of Facebook, get off social media, go sit outside. There's a lot of political stuff and a lot of grief and heaviness and heartache, and just get off the internet for a while. Just spend time with your family, do something that you enjoy. Thank the Lord every day for the days that he gives us life, and God bless. All right, bye-bye.